Let's go ahead and move on to example 5. This is the last example we're going to do together today, and that'll be it. All right. It says sketching a graph. Sketch a graph with a polynomial function having these characteristics. It says that the function is increasing when x is less than 0 and when x is greater than 4. The function is decreasing when x is between 0 and 4. F of x is greater than 0 when x is between -2 and 3 and when x is greater than 5. And f of x is less than 0 when x is less than 2 and when x is between 3 and 5. Okay, so let's use the graph to describe the degree of the leading coefficient. So we've got a lot of criteria here that need to be met. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw in a grid. Okay. Oh, you're showing me the end behavior already. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do after I draw in those axes is I'm going to start with f is increasing and f is decreasing. F is just your function, right? Tell me where your function is increasing and decreasing. And it says it's increasing when x is less than 0 and when x is greater than 4. I'm just going to make some markers here. This is where x was 0. I'm going to mark in where x would be 0. Okay, this is where x is 0. And I'm going to mark in where x is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's where x is 4. I'm just going to put a little marker in here. I'm not graphing anything. I'm just trying to block off chunks of my graph so I can label increasing or decreasing. Okay, so it says the function is increasing when x is less than 0. So I'm just going to put an I over here in this region to the left of 0. And it's also increasing when x is greater than 4. Okay, so this is where x is 4. I'm going to put an I when x is greater than 4 too. Again, I'm not graphing any part of my function yet. I'm just trying to get an idea of what the function would look like. Okay, so that takes care of this. F is decreasing when x is between 0 and 4. So between 0 and 4, I'm going to put a D because my graph's going to be decreasing in that region. Okay. So again, I haven't graphed anything yet. I just want to know where it's increasing and decreasing. All right. The next step says f of x is greater than 0 when x is between -2 and 3 and when x is greater than 5. What is another name for f of x? Y. Y. So this is saying y is greater than 0. What does it mean if y is greater than 0? Would that mean that your graph is above the x-axis or below the x-axis? How many people think above? Yes. If y is bigger than 0, it would be up here, right? It would be above the x-axis. Okay, so I'm going to make a note above x-axis. So our function is above the x-axis between -2 and 3. So between -2 and 1, 2, 3. Between these 2 points, my graph is going to be above the axis. So I'm just going to connect those 2 points and draw my function above the axis. What's wrong with how I connected those points? Look at your intervals of, go ahead. Okay, so if I look at my intervals of increasing and decreasing, from left to right here, it should be increasing. See how I almost make it increasing a little bit more, but that region should strictly be decreasing? Once it hits 0, I should start to turn down right there. I shouldn't keep going up at all, okay? So you have to be careful. That's the whole reason why we put increasing and decreasing in there, is so that you know what your function should look like. So once I hit this 0, x is 0, I'm going to make a downward turn and start decreasing, right? It stops increasing here, okay, and then it starts decreasing. Okay. I also have my function above the x-axis when x is bigger than 5. So here's 5, and that region is just increasing. Okay, so it looks something like that. Okay? The next part is it says f of x, or y, is less than 0 when x is less than -2 and when x is between 3 and 5. y is less than 0, that should be below the x-axis, right? That's where your y value should be less than 0. So we're going to graph our function below the x-axis when x is less than -2. Okay, so here's below. And when x is between 3 and 5. So here's between 3 and 5. I want to make my function decrease till I hit that blue line and then increase afterwards. Okay. And just look at your intervals. Here, my function should only be increasing. Is that true? Is it increasing from left to right? Yes. Okay. In this interval, my function should only be decreasing. Is it dropping from left to right there? Yes. In this last interval, my function should only be increasing. Is my function increasing from left to right? Yes. So you want to double check. That's the whole reason why we put I and D up at the top, is so you could check that at the end. Any questions about that? Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to look at this function and tell me information about the degree and the leading coefficient. Raise your hand if you can tell me what information we would know about the degree of this function based on that picture. What do we know about that function? I have an idea. It is odd. Why do you say it's odd?
It's not going up or down the same way.
Yes. It's different on either end, right? It's opposite on either end. They're not both going up or both going down. The end behavior has opposite directions for the arrows, right? So our degree would be odd, right? Because we have opposite end behavior. That's how we know. Okay? What can you tell me about the leading coefficient? Any ideas? Any? No? It's going to be positive. Why do you say it's positive? Great. The left side's pointing down, the right side's pointing up. So I know that the leading coefficient has to be positive. Good. Okay. Any questions about that? On your homework, there's no question that's quite this challenging. However, the whole point of this exercise was so you could get practice with intervals of increasing or decreasing. So that's what I want you to take away from this activity. If I ask you, where is the function increasing? Think about your little guy on a roller coaster. Here he is. He's going to fall out with the way I drew him. But he would be increasing from left to right when x is less than 0, right? Where else would he be increasing? Well, if you keep going from left to right, he would be down here at the bottom of the hill and increasing when x is bigger than 4, right? And then where is he decreasing? Where does that hill happen? He goes up the hill, and then right here, he's at the top of the hill, right? And then he's going to go down the hill between 0 and 4. Does everyone agree? So if I were to give you a graph, you should be able to identify what the intervals are of increasing and decreasing. Okay, tell me between what x values is the increasing, between what x values is the decreasing.
So we have to write it.
The increasing or decreasing, what I'm talking about is this section up here. If I gave you the graph, you should be able to do this part. Tell me where it's increasing or decreasing.